I remember the night vividly, the sound of the rain pounding against the roof of the old cabin, as I sat hunched over the table, staring at the flickering candlelight. It was the kind of storm that made every shadow feel alive. Every creak of the floorboards seemed like a whisper from the past. I was there to help my friend Lucy clean out her late grandmother's belongings. But something about that cabin felt wrong, off-kilter. As I sifted through dusty boxes, I stumbled upon an old photo album, its leather cover cracked and worn. It was then that I saw her, the woman who had disappeared 5 years earlier, hauntingly familiar yet eerily distant. Lucy had told me stories about her grandmother's peculiar behavior towards the end of her life, how she would speak of the curse that hung over their family. I had always dismissed these tales as mere superstition, another layer of folklore wrapped in the history of Willow Creek, but as I flipped through the faded photographs, a sense of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. Each picture seemed to depict a moment in time, a stark reminder of the happiness that had once filled the cabin. Now, the walls felt like they were closing in, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to uncover something we should. The storm raged on outside, and as I turned the pages, I found an envelope tucked between two photos. My curiosity piqued. I opened it to find a letter dated just weeks before my friend's grandmother had passed. It spoke of a hidden truth, a family secret that had loomed for generations. As I read the words, "Beware the curse," the air around us thickened. Lucy stood beside me, her face pale as she recognized her grandmother's handwriting. We exchanged a terrified glance, the kind that speaks volumes without uttering a single word. We had to know more. We had to dig deeper into this dark mystery. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, we began our search for answers. The next day, we visited the local library, hoping to uncover more about the history of Willow Creek and its past residents. The librarian, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, was hesitant at first, but when she heard the name of Lucy's grandmother, her demeanor shifted. She led us to a dusty corner filled with archives and whispered tales of disappearances, strange occurrences, and rumors that had long been buried. The air in the library felt electric, as if the past was clawing its way back to the surface. Among the records, we discovered that Lucy's grandmother had not been the first to vanish in Willow Creek. There were others, some names faded, others barely legible, but what stood out was a single entry that seemed to connect them all, a peculiar figure known only as the Watcher. This being had reportedly appeared whenever someone was about to disappear, lurking in the shadows, observing with hollow eyes. My blood ran cold as I recalled the photo album's last page, which depicted a dark figure in the background of a family portrait. It was all starting to make sense, yet the more we uncovered, the stronger the weight of dread became. As the days passed, we combed through more records and spoke with locals who had witnessed odd occurrences. Each account we gathered seemed to weave a web of mystery, drawing us deeper into a sinister history we never anticipated. One evening, a woman approached us in the local diner, her eyes wide with fear as she shared her own story of a close friend who had vanished years before. She recounted how her friend had begun to act strange, talking about the Watcher as if it were a companion. It struck me then. This wasn't just folklore. This was an entity that had invaded the lives and minds of those it chose. Determined to confront this entity, Lucy and I decided to visit the site where her grandmother was last seen. The old abandoned well on the outskirts of town had become a local legend, said to be a place where the missing would be drawn to their doom. It was surrounded by thick brush and gnarled trees, each one twisted and contorted as if in pain. As we approached, the air grew heavy and I could almost hear whispers in the wind. Lucy clutched my arm, her grip tight with apprehension. We had to go down, had to see if there was any truth to the tales that had echoed through the town for decades. Descending into the well felt surreal, it was dark and damp, the walls slick with moss. We lit our flashlights, casting beams of light against the wet stone, revealing inscriptions etched into the walls, names of the missing, including Lucy's grandmother. With every name we illuminated, the air grew colder. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the depths below, a low rumble that reverberated through the silence. We froze, heartbeats pounding in our ears. It was as if the well itself were alive, breathing, watching, waiting for its next victim. I felt an inexplicable pull, like unseen hands reaching for us. In that moment of terror, we made a choice to escape. We climbed back up, our hearts racing as the realization hit. This wasn't just a search for Lucy's grandmother, but a confrontation with something far darker. Outside, the storm had subsided, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. But as we reached the surface, we turned to find a figure standing at the edge of the tree line, its features obscured by shadow. It watched us, unmoving, as if it had been waiting, patiently observing our every move. I felt my breath hitch. We had crossed into a realm we never wanted to visit. We raced back to Lucy's cabin, locking the door behind us as we tried to catch our breath. But sleep would not come. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind felt like the Watcher was right outside. The next morning, I awoke to find Lucy gone, her bedroom empty, her things untouched. Panic surged through me, and I knew I had to act quickly. I called the local authorities, but they dismissed my concerns as mere superstition. With no real evidence of foul play, they were unwilling to investigate. I felt utterly helpless, trapped in a nightmare that had no end. Days turned into weeks, and Lucy's name faded from the town's memory, wrapped in layers of disbelief and denial. I refused to give up. I continued my investigation, poring over every detail I gathered, desperately seeking a connection. It was during one late-night search that I stumbled upon an old newspaper article detailing the first disappearance linked to the Watcher. The chilling headline read, "Curse claims another victim." I felt a chill run down my spine as I read the accounts of locals who had witnessed the dark figure, each terrified confession eerily reminiscent of what Lucy had shared in the past. It was clear now we were not alone in this terror. One fateful evening, driven by desperation and hope, I returned to the site of the well once more, armed with nothing but a flashlight and the determination to find Lucy. As I approached, I felt drawn to the dark abyss, the cold grip of fear wrapping around my heart. I called out her name, my voice echoing through the depths, but only the silence replied. And then, just as I was about to leave, I saw it, a glimmer of something beneath the surface of the water, something that glinted with a metallic sheen. My heart raced. I had to know what it was. Leaning closer, I peered into the darkness, and what I saw made my blood run cold. What lay at the bottom of that well was a necklace, its chain tangled and tarnished. Attached was a locket, and when I pried it open, I was met with the faces of Lucy and her grandmother, both looking eerily happy. Their eyes, however, were devoid of life, as if they had belonged to shadows once vibrant. Questions raced through my mind. Had they known? Was Lucy's disappearance tied to the curse? I stumbled back from the well, terror enveloping me as I realized that the Watcher had been there all along, playing its ghastly game. The chilling revelation sank in. Were the missing truly gone, or were they waiting for someone else to join their ranks? I stumbled out of the grove, breathless and terrified, the weight of my discovery pressing down on me like a suffocating fog. The piece I had unearthed was both a curse and a beacon, a cruel reminder of the cycle that bound us to the Watcher. What haunted me most was the realization that Lucy was still out there somewhere in the shadows, waiting for someone to seek her out, ready to pull me into the abyss with her. And as I made my way home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that the Watcher's gaze was fixed upon my every step. What had I awakened? What legacy of darkness would I have to confront next? The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay as I stood at the entrance of Old Cedar Cemetery. It was a place where whispers of the past lingered, where the stories of those long gone seemed to float through the trees. I had come to explore the rumored hauntings that surrounded this forsaken plot of land, hoping to uncover the truth behind the tales. As I ventured deeper, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting unsettling shadows that danced among the gravestones. It was at that moment I felt it, an insidious presence watching me, lurking just beyond the veil of darkness. Despite the chill creeping up my spine, curiosity urged me forward. I had read countless articles detailing the strange happenings reported by visitors, disembodied voices, unexplained lights, and the occasional sighting of a translucent figure gliding between the graves. One tale spoke of a woman who had wandered into the cemetery only to vanish without a trace, her cries for help echoing long after she was gone. The locals whispered that her spirit remained, bound to the grounds, searching for a way out. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of dread and anticipation as I arrived at her grave, marked by a crumbling headstone with her name barely legible. The name etched into the stone was Elizabeth Warner, a young woman who had mysteriously disappeared in 1972. Her story had captivated me, and I felt compelled to pay my respects. Kneeling before her grave, I whispered a silent prayer, hoping to forge a connection with the lost soul. As I did, a sudden gust of wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing my flashlight and plunging me into darkness. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to turn it back on, the darkness feeling almost sentient, as though it sought to consume me. And then I heard it, a soft, mournful sob echoing in the stillness, sending chills racing down my spine. My heart raced as I struggled to regain control, desperately searching for the source of the sound. The sobs grew louder, intermingling with the rustling leaves, creating a haunting melody that resonated deep within me. I turned toward the direction of the sound, trying to pierce the veil of darkness with my flashlight, but it was futile. I felt a cold breeze against my skin, causing goosebumps to rise. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the sobs ceased, leaving an eerie silence hanging in the air. It felt as though the very ground beneath me was holding its breath, waiting for what would come next. Gathering my courage, I called out, "Elizabeth, is that you?" My voice trembled as I spoke her name, the words hanging heavy in the air. For a moment, the only response was the rustling of leaves. Then, a figure flickered in the corner of my eye, a spectral silhouette moving between the tombstones. I whipped my flashlight around, but the figure was gone. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, each beat a reminder of the danger I was inviting by seeking her out. Who was I to disturb the peace of the departed? Yet the pull of the mystery was too strong to resist. Driven by an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth, I delved into Elizabeth's past, visiting the local library and sifting through dusty archives. Each article painted a portrait of a young woman full of dreams, yet a victim of tragic circumstances. Elizabeth had been a beloved figure in the community, but her life took a dark turn shortly before her disappearance. Friends spoke of her increasingly erratic behavior, claiming she had become obsessed with the supernatural, convinced that the spirits of the cemetery were calling to her. As I pieced together her story, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was inching closer to a truth that was better left buried. One evening, I discovered a piece of paper hidden within an old book, containing a list of names. Each entry was accompanied by dates, some marked with a crude X. My heart raced as I recognized two names, Elizabeth Warner and another woman reported missing shortly after. The chilling realization washed over me. There was a connection, a pattern to these disappearances. The names on the list seemed to signify a countdown, each mark an ominous reminder of the lives lost within the shadowed confines of Old Cedar Cemetery. I knew I had to dig deeper. The truth was clawing its way to the surface. As the moon hung high in the sky, I returned to the cemetery, armed with the list and a renewed determination. The air felt charged, electric, as if the spirits of the departed were watching me, urging me to uncover the truth. I stood before Elizabeth's grave once more, heart pounding as I whispered the names from my list into the night. I felt a shift in the atmosphere, an unseen force gathering around me, a warning and a welcome all at once. And then the air thickened, a figure emerging from the shadows. A woman, her face delicately illuminated by the moonlight. It was Elizabeth, her expression a mixture of sorrow and urgency. She reached out, her fingers grazing the surface of the gravestone, tears pooling in her spectral eyes. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The anguish in her eyes was palpable, and I felt an overwhelming surge of empathy. This was not just a ghost. This was a woman trapped in her own torment. "What happened to you?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling. In response, she pointed towards a cluster of trees at the edge of the cemetery, a direction that felt weighty, steeped in dark secrets. I knew I had to follow. I needed to know where she was leading me, what hidden truths awaited us both. As I made my way toward the trees, Elizabeth's presence faded, leaving me alone in the dark. The urgency of my mission propelled me forward, my heart racing as I pushed through the thick underbrush. Those trees held secrets. I could feel it in my bones. Eventually, I stumbled upon an old, rotting shed, its walls warped and covered with vines. A sense of dread washed over me as I approached, the air heavy with the memories of what lay within. The door creaked open, revealing an assortment of forgotten relics, but it was the faint but unmistakable scent of decay that truly caught my attention. I edged inside, my flashlight beam piercing the darkness. Inside, amidst the clutter, I uncovered a diary, its pages yellowed and fragile. It belonged to Elizabeth, and as I read her final entries, horror flooded through me. She spoke of a darkness that called to her, a promise of knowledge whispered by the spirits of the cemetery. Her obsession had deepened, leading her to perform rituals beneath the full moon, hoping to commune with the dead. But as she descended deeper into the unknown, something had taken hold of her, a malevolent entity, preying on her fears and desires. I realized too late that Elizabeth had been consumed by the very darkness she sought to understand. With each word I read, I felt a growing sorrow for the lost souls whose lives had been intertwined with Elizabeth's. She was not the only one drawn into the darkness. The other names on my list began to connect, revealing a sinister network of disappearances linked to her rituals. The cemetery was not just a resting place. It was a portal, a nexus of malevolence that fed off the living. My heart raced as I realized the implications. If I didn't act quickly, I could become the next name on that cursed list. Elizabeth's cries for help echoed in my mind, and I knew it was time to confront the darkness once and for all. Determined to break the cycle, I returned to the cemetery, armed with Elizabeth's diary and a newfound sense of purpose. I stood at her grave, tears streaming down my face as I recited a prayer, calling upon the spirits to help free her from the curse. With each word, I felt the air grow heavy, a palpable energy surrounding me. As I opened the diary to its final pages, I felt Elizabeth's presence return, stronger this time, as though she were guiding me through the words. "You must let go," she whispered urgently, her voice echoing within. "Only then can we both find peace." As I poured my soul into those words, a breeze stirred, swirling around me like a cleansing fire. It felt as though the weight of the cemetery was lifting, the spirits of those trapped finally finding their release. But just as quickly as it began, the wind ceased, leaving an unsettling silence in its wake. Elizabeth appeared one last time, her expression radiant yet sorrowful. "Thank you," she breathed, and with that she vanished into the night, leaving me alone in the stillness of the cemetery. For a fleeting moment I felt victorious, but the darkness lingered, an echo of what had transpired. The following morning I returned to the cemetery, hoping against hope that the oppressive atmosphere had lifted. But as I walked among the graves, I felt an unsettling presence looming, a reminder that not all shadows had been banished. As I approached the entrance, I noticed a new headstone, its stark white marble glistening in the sunlight. My heart dropped as I read the name, Elizabeth Warner. Had I truly freed her, or had the darkness merely shifted, preparing to claim another victim? The question haunted me as I left, a chilling reminder of the secrets that still lurked beneath the surface of Old Cedar Cemetery. The old hollow oak house loomed before me like a forgotten sentinel, its windows cracked and boarded up, shrouded in a thick fog. I had heard the stories, the whispers about the children who had vanished from its halls under mysterious circumstances. It was a tale that had haunted the town for generations, a dark shadow cast over the once grand estate. As I approached, a sense of foreboding washed over me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lingered just beyond the threshold, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. The last resident of Hollow Oak House, an eccentric woman named Agnes, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of despair that hung heavy in the air. I had come to investigate her disappearance, hoping to expose the truth hidden within the decaying walls. Growing up, I had often listened to the tales of children who disappeared from the house, foster children, always from troubled backgrounds, brought in under the guise of love and care. The townsfolk often described the house as a refuge turned prison, a place where hope went to die. Equipped with a camera and flashlight, I stepped into the entrance hall, my heart pounding in my chest as I felt the weight of countless gazes upon me. The walls were adorned with faded portraits of the children who had once lived there, each one smiling at me, yet their eyes held an emptiness that seemed to penetrate my soul. I couldn't help but wonder how many of them had been lost, their laughter now replaced by echoes of despair. The air grew colder as I moved deeper into the house, and I swore I could hear whispers trailing behind me, secrets yearning to be uncovered. Venturing into the basement, I could feel the atmosphere shift, thick with the scent of mildew and something more unsettling. The cold air wrapped around me like a shroud, and a sense of dread curdled in my stomach. It was here that the rumors spoke of dark rituals and disappearances, where Agnes had allegedly conducted her so-called therapy sessions with the children. The basement was filled with remnants of forgotten toys, their bright colors faded with age, and a worn-out sofa that seemed to sag under the weight of memories. But it was the far corner of the room that drew my attention, a makeshift altar adorned with trinkets and drawings. My blood ran cold as I realized they were the children's creations, desperate messages left behind in hopes of escaping the darkness. As I examined the altar, a chill raced through the room, and the shadows began to shift. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me like a tempest. I felt an overwhelming urge to leave, but a strange compulsion kept me rooted in place. The drawings depicted scenes of anguish and fear, children trapped within the house, pleading for help. Suddenly, a voice pierced the overwhelming silence, a soft, sorrowful wail that echoed through the basement. I turned heart-pounding, searching for the source, but found only darkness. The weight of their cries settled like a leaden blanket over me, suffocating and cold. Desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere, I rushed back upstairs and into the parlor, hoping to catch my breath. The air felt thick with despair, as if the walls themselves were mourning the lost children. I noticed a small bookshelf, its surface covered in a fine layer of dust. As I reached for a book, a heavy volume tumbled to the floor, landing with a thud that echoed through the silence. My heart raced as I opened it, revealing pages filled with Agnes's handwritten accounts. They detailed her unorthodox methods, ways to cleanse the children of their flaws, methods that left scars far deeper than anyone could see. The disturbing revelation sent chills down my spine as I delved deeper into Agnes's mind. She described her belief that the children were vessels for dark spirits, needing to be purified through rituals meant to expel the evil within them. With each entry, it became clear that her so-called therapy was nothing but a guise for the torment she inflicted. It was in her frantic scrawl I found a name, the last child she had taken in, a girl named Clara, who had vanished the night before Agnes disappeared. Panic surged as I realized Clara's fate was intertwined with this nightmare. Driven by a sense of urgency, I gathered the pages and returned to the basement, knowing I needed to confront whatever darkness lingered within the house. The shadows thickened around me, and as I prepared to reveal information about Clara, the air crackled with malevolence. My voice trembled as I called out, "Clara, if you're here, I want to help you." The silence was deafening, but then I caught a quick motion out of the corner of my eye, a fleeting glimpse of a child's figure, pale and translucent. I felt the temperature drop further, as if Clara's spirit had grown bold enough to reveal herself. The apparition hovered near the altar, and as I drew closer, Clara's expression shifted from fear to something akin to desperation. With trembling hands, I reached for the drawings, holding them up as if they were a lifeline. In response, Clara pointed to a wall that was partially hidden behind old storage crates. I felt a surge of potency course through me. This was a clue, a way to uncover the truth of what had happened in Hollow Oak House. The weight of the past pressed heavily on my shoulders as I began shifting the crates, feeling the air thicken with anticipation and dread. As I cleared the last crate, I uncovered a door, its wood warped but still standing strong against the years of neglect. Heart racing, I turned the handle and pushed it open, revealing a hidden room filled with even more remnants of the past, discarded belongings, clothes that appeared to belong to children. But in the center of the room stood a large mirror, its surface cracked and covered in dust, reflecting a distorted image of the room. I felt a powerful urge to step inside, to face whatever horrors awaited me. Clara's spirit urged me onward, and I knew I could not turn back now. Inside the room, I felt the air thrum with energy, the kind that pulls at your very soul. The mirror seemed to pulse with a sinister life of its own, and I could see shadows moving within its depths, images of the children who had once inhabited this nightmarish place, their faces twisted in fear and anguish. I was struck by the overwhelming grief of their lost lives. I knew I had to confront the darkness that had ensnared them, to break the cycle of suffering once and for all. Gathering my resolve, I raised my voice and demanded, "What do you want from us? Why did you take Clara?" The air crackled with energy, and the whispers grew louder, rising to a cacophony of anguished screams. In that moment, I understood this was not just a single spirit trapped within the walls, but a legion of souls, all lost to Agnes's cruelty. They were crying out for justice, for the world to hear their pain. I felt an overwhelming surge of empathy, and I pledged to help them find peace. "You are not forgotten," I shouted, my voice resolute. "I will uncover the truth. I will tell your stories." In response, the shadows began to swirl around me, growing darker, more oppressive. With every word I spoke, I felt the weight of the darkness begin to shift. The mirror trembled, as if responding to my cries for justice. Clara's spirit hovered closer, her expression softened, a flicker of hope shining in her ghostly eyes. I knew I had to